Good morning, good day, and welcome back to everyone joining us. I am hopefully at this point your very familiar podcast expert, Kyle, and today we've got Michael Greenberg with us. So, a quick little intro about Michael. Started his career in venture-backed startups, primarily in operations and technology, and there was a little timeline around acting as pretty much a CTO for hire. His background in technology-enabled operations as well as growth consulting was a business entrepreneur podcast for quite a long time, so it makes an absolutely fitting guest for this show today. And currently now is the CEO and founder of Third Brain Automation, which is a partner for automating growth through AI-powered workflows and operations. So, Michael, thank you so much for taking some time today to chat to us. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. I know we've got a really exciting few conversation topics to discuss. Thank you for joining us. Anything on the intro that I've maybe missed out that you want to add in?
Uh, I think I also have a dog, and I really enjoy baking bread,
Okay.
in my free time. So,
That was
not
not
just all
the answer I
business.
was expecting, but I love it nonetheless. What is your dog? What type of dog do you have?
So I've got some combination of doodle. I'm
Okay.
not quite sure what the mix is, but he's large, he's chocolate. He is very much just an 80-pound poodle.
Okay.
So most of my family has standard poodles, so I've got to experience them. Whip smart, high energy, loves to chase rabbits. Good boy.
Sounds like you got your hands full there. And I mean, maybe one question on that. Is your dog a fan of the bread that you bake or not?
Oh, yeah, maybe too much. Um, so we've got to keep a wall up to the kitchen.
I mean, judging by the amount of exercise that your doggo is doing, sounds like maybe it's okay with the carb intake. But
Yeah,
without us getting
absolutely.
too derailed here, so for all the guests listening, just off air before we got started, Michael and I were having a quick chat around actually implementing AI in organizations, and the topic around today is exactly that: AI and compliance, which I mean sounds so fitting. It's the biggest talk at the moment. If you talk about compliance or you're talking about technology, you're involving artificial intelligence somewhere in there. Choosing the right software and vendors. And what does this actually look like to manifest success in a startup company? What we were just discussing is around these different levels of digital operation. And one of the key points that you've already made mention of is that in order to be able to actually effectively deploy AI, a business needs to be at quite a high operational level to begin to be able to actually train these models. So maybe that is a starting point for our conversation. I'm going to open the floor there and let you expand on that a bit more.
Yeah. So we really talk about, at least internally, 5 levels of digital operations. And that starts at level 0, which is not in the cloud. Most of your work's on paper. We have lots of clients coming to us with carbon copies, still a part of their process at some point. Um, and that's 0. That's not even digital operations yet. You've got to get digital. That's analog. So level 1 is generally going to be some combination of like siloed software. You might have some things you log into, you might have tools you use, but none of them talk to each other. Most of them can't talk to each other. And your data is all locked up in different places, so you have to manually transport. Level 2 is when you start to get to more cloud technologies where you can connect them. And at that point, we say you have an integratable cloud. So it's possible to get everything in one layer. It's possible to get it all aligned, but you're not actually there. And along with that, in most companies, they don't actually know who's supposed to do what when and where the data is supposed to go. So there's not really good workflow documentation to support level 3, which is where we try to get all of our clients to in the first year with them, which is what we call a unified data layer. So then, if we want to know who your customers are or what a contact is, it's in the CRM. We know exactly where it is, and we know how to pull that record and sync that record to your customer support system, to your project management system, wherever it's going. Level 3 is the goal for most businesses because in order to implement AI effectively, you need unified, integrated data that talks to each other about your business. So you have clean data to then build AI systems on top of. And I'd like to clarify what we actually mean by AI, just to break out. Most of what we talk about as AI today is large language models, the chat GPTs and similar. Those are the real breakout technology at the moment. There's a lot of other things going on in AI, but most of what we actually mean when we mention it right now is that.
Absolutely. And then I feel like you've left the audience on a little bit of a cliffhanger. You've given us 5 levels and we've stopped at level 4.
So we're actually only at level 3. Level 4 is when we get data automation and some manual automation in. And so we get to automated process with human in the loop. Generally, we might have a department at level 4 and another at level 2, and we're trying to get the whole company to level 3 so we can start getting everyone above that. Level 5 is what we call end state automation. So that's when we can have an integrated AI layer, and then humans are mostly involved to supervise the processes or to be the face of the process. And the vast majority, all of the work that could be automated or handed off has been automated and handed off. And all of the knowledge is accessible at your fingertips.
Got you. And so now going a few steps back, now that we've finally got our 5 levels that go from 0 to 5, which is 6 but 5, and we wonder why
Well,
people are
it's
confused about
5 levels
AI.
of digital operations. Level 0 is analog, right?
Absolutely.
It's
I'm with you. I'm with
not
you.
digital. So
Sure.
can't be
Got you.
can't be level.
So let's take that conversation to the main compliance challenges. And we're saying that that ideal situation or level that you're talking about is at level 3. What are the main sort of hindrances or challenges that you find that are preventing companies or customers getting to that point?
Yeah. So I think the most common issues come in a few forms. Number 1 is just the wrong tools. So somebody picked a system 15 years ago and that system has not been updated and it has no API and it has no way to move data in or out of that system automatically. And as a result, there's a whole lot of processes that are all stuck because there's one tool that doesn't fit the modern day workflow. Number 2 is the tools exist, but they don't have the technical team to implement a solution that is compliant for their needs. So this happens a lot in like small healthcare businesses where they would like to implement Zapier because all of their friends are implementing Zapier, but Zapier is not HIPAA compliant. I'm not even sure if it's SOC 2 compliant. So you can't use it for so many things that you would like to. You can't pass customer data through there in any way or have a hint of that risk occurring. But if you're on ClickUp, ClickUp has a HIPAA compliant enterprise plan and it is SOC 2 compliant off the shelf. So if you're in one of those regulated industries, we know we can build a system on top of a tool like that. And so it's picking the right tools. It's having the teams in place to actually be able to build those connections. Because if you can't use Zapier, you probably need to do some sort of self hosted automation and deploy it to the cloud. And then you really need like a developer, somebody who can write code and do that sort of technical work. So those are the two most common. I'd say the third one is it is just an older business. We work with a lot of legacy businesses. And when you're 10, 20, 30 years old, you have a lot of decisions in technology that were made 3 or 4 generations ago, where it's, oh, some of these are mission critical systems we cannot touch. And so we have to design solutions around them. And we have a client now who has an ERP that was made 20 years ago that runs their manufacturing machinery that cannot be changed. And so we have to go into the code of that ERP and add a little webhook so that way it can pass the data out to the rest of the cloud systems at the right time. And that's a very complex project to accomplish and not screw anything up.
Mm, absolutely. And so, I mean, a couple of those points are somewhat unavoidable by nature and inherently. If you've got an old legacy system, you have the wrong tool that's been used for many years. So, taking the more manageable situations where you potentially want to implement tools, how would you best suggest, and this is also where I potentially get excited with the conversation, bringing compliance and relevant tools and AI into it, making those decisions to ensure that, okay, you want to use an AI tool or add in some sort of automation and make sure that your data transfer is going to meet the standards and regulations of whatever data you're dealing with.
Yeah. So this is very much a measure one twice, cut once
Sure.
process. Um, we go through every single tool in the stack, every single infrastructure provider, and then we have to go pull their certificates and
Mm,
confirm that, oh, they are compliant and certified for this thing every step of the way. And then we use workflow diagramming tools to put it all down on paper, digital paper, and say, okay, it's going to start here, and then this form and this tool is compliant for these things, and it is going to pass through this system, which is compliant because we pulled these, and it's going to go
mm.
to this system, and we map it all out, and we document it, and we make sure that it all works on paper before we ever start putting the code together.
Got
So
you.
it's really not a hard process, but it's a boring one unless you're a
Mm.
compliance or like an operations nerd or somebody like that who really wants to do that sort of work.
Absolutely. And I mean, so from my line of work, obviously on a daily basis, that same approach where there's certain responsibilities on you, not even necessarily from an AI perspective, but the blind reliance, I'll say, on some tools where, oh, you're going to use a cloud provider being your AWS, your GCP, your Azure, and okay, they're taking care of everything for me. And not actually looking at, for example, your complementary user entity controls that you have a responsibility as a user of that product to go and map out. And I mean, what I typically find is, for the most part, again, it becomes a bit of a compliance check, and there's value that comes out of it from customers. But my question to you is, how are you able to get that value for the customer by explaining, okay, this is a very manual, tedious process that we now need to go through, and this is the end goal? I mean, not getting millions of dollars worth of fines is obviously quite an obvious one. How else do you generate that sort of value from the process?
Yeah, pretty simply actually. Most process automation projects are going to have a positive return within 15 months of deployment. For higher volume, higher cost processes, that can be as low as 2 or 3 months. And so for most businesses, they see the immediate value and they see the snowball because, and this is a real example. Got one of our clients now just told me yesterday he was talking with a friend of his who has an identically sized business. Literally, they both run multi location businesses, same industry, same number of locations, plus or minus two. They've got each got a few dozen. One guy has 10 bookkeepers in his accounting department, the other has three. One of them has gone through the digital operations overhaul and put all their automation in place. The other one has not. It's and that just puts it in stark contrast for most people.
Yeah, fair enough. That ROI and that accuracy, like you say, I mean, taking nothing away from the intelligence of people, but repeatable, mundane, day-to-day tasks, like we know, there's a clear winner. Um, so the elephant in the room potentially there that I want to address is, what's your take and stance on the whole automate everything and this perception, which I know is hugely skewed, that, oh no, I'm going to be replaced by AI, which, I mean, going back to your example now, isn't really the case. I would say it's more maybe a situation of you've optimized the process, but there's still a human need. Where do you sit with that?
Yeah, I think we have a phrase at our company. Don't use a chainsaw if you can't swing an axe. And that, if you don't know lumber, or you've never seen somebody use either one, chainsaw kicks a lot more than an axe, and it's a lot more dangerous. It's an automated version. So we aren't going to automate a process that doesn't already work really, really well.
Mhm.
Um, and we are not going to automate everything if we aren't 100% sure that that automation is going to work all the time. And right now, anytime you deploy an LLM, any sort of AI solution like that, by nature of the design in the current systems, it cannot be 100% accurate. And so all AI systems we deploy right now are human in the loop or human supervised. A human is always approving and it is normally setting the direction for the work as well. That's I wouldn't let an intern have the keys to the kingdom, and I'm not going to let an AI either.
I
Yet.
absolutely love how that's been put. Yeah, that really makes a lot of sense. It also just puts it into context, like you're saying. And next question then on that, you have startup companies that want to scale, they want to move fast, build a business. Like you're saying, you can't automate a process until it's working well. How do you practically, this is maybe one of the little, I call them golden nugget segments in it, where's that balance between scaling up really fast but not automating before you are at this level 3 that you're ready to actually tackle it?
Yeah. So we work with high growth companies because they have very similar issues to the legacy systems, just totally different reasons why. Because when you're growing fast, we call it ops debt as like the operational equivalent of tech debt. In legacy businesses, you end up with ops debt and tech debt because people leave, processes don't get documented, there's knowledge loss, that sort of thing. In new businesses that are high growth, you get ops debt because you're growing so fast, you have to put inefficient processes in place in order to allow the company to scale. That's what do things that don't scale actually means. If that never broke through, it means use inefficient processes that will not scale because they fit the need of the company right now. So we are generally trying to find the balance with a client on that. What that means in practice is we are putting infrastructure in place every step of the way. So, manufacturing client that needs to manage all their shipping and logistics, we're going to set that up off of templates and just general ideas for V1. They're going to start manually inputting data, playing with it, and move forward. But that V1 is going to be built in a system that we know is ready to continue onward. It's going to be the same system we've already been building in. And we're already going to have the architecture map. So we know that we are compliant and that we are able to keep everything connected and passing through. So while it might be siloed and a level 2 system right now, we know and we have a clear path to take it to level 3 after they've ironed out that process a little more.
And looking at the connectedness of it all, when someone is going through the process, is there, I suppose there's never a point where you can't do it, but I'm thinking of the whole mapping, right? And you've got
Yeah.
all your different tools interconnected, and the impact of changing a critical tool to say, okay, we wanted to use this, it suits our needs, and then we realize down the line it's a really key CRM tool or whatever the case is, but we actually need to now go and change that. Is there a time, or how much additional complexity does that add into a project to say, okay, we should have actually thought of this 6 months ago before we started the whole mapping versus the impact of going forwards now?
So, at least for us, that's normally a situation we're walking into where it's more of a political issue than it is a
Okay.
tool issue.
Okay.
Um, at least in most cases, if somebody's put something in like that, it's because it was somebody's pet project. Um, if it's a mission critical system, we can almost always build around it. Like, we're not going to migrate ERPs for somebody if their ERP is working. We don't want you to change the way you work. We want to make it easier for you to do your work. And
Sure.
so when there's like a suboptimal tool choice, in general, we're going to build around that because it is almost never worthwhile to go through that sort of migration. Unless you have really strong like leadership and political interest and people hate the tool. We've migrated people from Salesforce to like ClickUp because they were literally using Salesforce for project management. That did not work for them, and they were very happy when they moved. But I think it's the exception that proves the rule, which is you should avoid those sort of large scale technology changes whenever you can.
And let's talk about now that criteria or what you look at. You're now looking at implementing a new software or vendor. What are the real no goes and red flags from what you've seen?
No API is generally going to be like oh, this is probably not a tool we want in our stack. Right? It's just like, oh, these people don't want to integrate with anything. They want your data all locked in their system, and that's not that's not great. Now, there are cases of no API but has great integrations via some other setup that works very well. And there's cases where it doesn't need to integrate with anything, or it only needs to integrate with one thing, like a ads manager interface may only need to integrate with the one ads platform that it runs on. You don't need it plugging into everything else. Um, so yeah, there's cases when we can find tools that don't need to fit, but in most cases we are looking at how well does it integrate with things. If it does integrate well, is it well reviewed? Is it easy to work with from an integrations perspective? Is the pricing friendly for companies to deploy on? Like we had a case very recently where a client was doing ERP to HubSpot, and there was a middleware provider that had like the exact integration built, but they wanted to charge 20, 30 grand a year to deploy that. And we're like, we can charge you 20 grand once, and then you can have the same thing built and own it. And I think that there's a lot of that now, especially in software, where like, oh, the cost of building a custom solution for a company is actually cheaper than the cost of buying the software off the shelf for a year or two.
And I think exactly your end of that ties into the final sort of talking point and topic I wanted to go over today, and that's that scaling upside. So you've already alluded to a lot of it, but companies now in this position, okay, you've got them hooked now. They've bought into this, they want to go through it. And one of your previous examples, like you said, doing a not a backwards migration, but going from a big, powerful tool like Salesforce to a I don't want to call ClickUp a more limited tool, but a more dedicated tool like ClickUp. How do you, or what's that sort of guidance that would help a startup ensure their scalability? What do you start with as a tool to allow you to grow further? Yeah, I'm gonna present it there.
Yeah. So I think the best starting place is a tool like ClickUp. Um, what, and I'm going to put ClickUp, Airtable, Notion, and Monday in sort of the same category of
Sure.
tools. And there's a few others, but that's enough of a list for this purpose. These are all tools that have evolved out of some variation of project or task management or data management, and they have turned into tools that allow you to display structured data in many ways. That makes them great for being like all in one tools to handle a lot of the different little data management operations functions of an early business. As you scale, the first thing you're probably going to separate out is your CRM. And For most customers these days, we see HubSpot, ADIO, and custom CRM implementations as the three most common. We have a lot of clients who ask us to build custom CRMs inside of ClickUp because they're already on ClickUp. We do it. It's not really recommended, but it does the job. Um, and then you're probably going to need some sort of AI and automation stack. You're going to be right now. You're going to be using multiple AI vendors. There's just no way around that at the moment. Automation, you're probably going to be using multiple if you go no code or low code, like Zapier and Make. But once you go to a tool like Pipedream or anything where you can actually start writing code in it, you don't have to go any lower because you can automate everything with that sort of code. Um, so you get your CRM, you get your data automation in place, you have some sort of AI tool, you have a that work management tool. Most companies are going to have some sort of communications tool for internal comms. Slack is the most common right now. Um, and that is a very common stack that I'm outlining. And then you're going to have more specific tools to your industry and to like the type of business you're operating. But
And
that's the core.
I want to actually say at this point now, because you raised so many very interesting points that I lied. It's not my last question. I want to add one more in that with, so your starting point, do you find, I mean, people are not always very receptive to change, right? People don't like change.
Yeah.
How do you balance that crossover between staying with a broken tool because you know how to use and navigate this broken tool and it works, versus saying, look, it's going to be a bit of a pain, but the end goal is going to be so much better? Do you come across that quite often, or are we now just in a digital space that there's so many tools that, okay, let's move to a new one and on we go?
I mean, no, people hate changing tools. Like, look,
Yeah,
nobody enjoys it. I know they don't enjoy it. They know I know they don't enjoy it. If I'm telling you you got to switch tools, it's because you got to switch tools.
yeah,
Um, we're gonna do a whole song and dance. It's gonna if we know you have to switch a tool, we're gonna spend another 2 or 3 weeks showing you exactly how we have tried every avenue. So and how the only way to get this done is to switch. Um, but if we're making a switch like that, your life is going to be measurably easier afterwards because your work is going to be so much easier as a result. And that's really what it comes down to is people are like, "Oh, I'm not going to have to worry about this problem anymore." The 4 hours I spend transferring data from client calls into a client brief so that way our team can start an onboarding process, I don't have to do that anymore. Yeah, the happiness outweighs the pain in the end.
sure. Yeah, that makes sense. And maybe wrapping it up in another discussion point is looking at the company. What is that ideal project look like for you? You guys come in, you start with a project, everything's bad, you leave. There's the AI empowerment. Just I suppose simple high level steps of someone that wants to work with you. I suppose this becomes a bit of a sales pitch now, doesn't it? But what that outcome looks like.
Yeah. So our clients partner with us generally for 6 to 12 months on their first contract because this is a process. You're not going to get anything done in your first month or two, really. We're going to be diagramming, doing that architecture, understanding a business. And if somebody who wants to do this stuff for you isn't following roughly the same process, I feel confident saying they're doing it wrong because of a mastermind with 8 other guys running essentially the same business in different niches. And we all follow roughly the same system. So, first, you're going to do that sort of audit workflow diagramming architecture step. Then, we're going to move into implementation and that's going to be an iterative process. So we're going to get something that's easy to use and out as an alpha pretty quickly, generally 2 to 3 weeks. And then we're going to iterate on that every week or two until we get to the point that we have something finished and shippable. At which point we update documentation, we create walkthrough and training videos, And then we roll it out to the team, train the team on how to use it. And this is the same process for when we're building a standalone AI tool or we're building a custom workflow in ClickUp or an Airtable or a Notion. It really, at the end of the day, we're telling people how to do something with some set of tools, and we're showing them all of the new automations or AI companions that they have to get that work done.
Perfect. Thank you. Look, I mean, from my side, and being privileged enough to be in a space where I deal with a lot of technology, work with a lot of customers in different technology. The business case and the place for it makes so much sense. And it really is I want to use the word fun space to be in. I know fun and compliance often don't really get associated together, but it is a cool space. And like you say, there's a tool for everything. And if it's really broken and you really need another tool, well, there's another tool for that as well. So, I mean, from my side, thank you very much for taking the time today to really practically actually just walk through the whole process of what AI powered workflows look like. I've really, really enjoyed the discussion and conversation, and I'm absolutely sure everyone that's listening to this compliance podcast shares the same sentiment. So, if there's anything you want to add in wrapping up, please feel absolutely free.
Thank you, Kyle. I guess I just got to give myself the plug. Go check us out at thirdbrainautomation.com, and have a wonderful rest of your week.
Magic. Thank you, Michael. It's been an absolute blast.
Thank you.